Hey guys, tonight we're heading somewhere completely different. We are going to a place that feels less like a landscape and more like an idea of cold, of remoteness, of ultimate quiet. We're traveling back in time, about 4,500 years, to meet the very first people to ever set foot in Greenland. Think about that for a second. An entire continent-sized island, a blank slate of rock, ice, and fjords, completely unpopulated. You're about to be one of the very first to explore it, to feel the bite of the wind off the glacial ice, to see the vast, empty horizon under an immense, indifferent sky. It's a place so isolated and so harsh that it's hard to imagine, even for a seasoned couch adventurer like you. It's a land that probably would have just ended you if you were there alone. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're up for it, drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is. I love seeing just how far these little journeys travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You feel the chill seep into your bones, not a harsh sudden shock, but a slow, creeping cold that makes the air feel heavy. Your breath hangs in front of you, a pale ghost in the twilight. You're standing on the edge of a world that is only just beginning to be inhabited, and the silence is immense. It's the kind of silence that doesn't just lack sound, it absorbs it, swallowing every crunch of snow underfoot, every whisper of wind. This is the Saqqaq period, named after the modern settlement where their artifacts were first found, but to them, it was just home. Their first home. You can almost feel the presence of the land, ancient and indifferent. It's an empty canvas, and you are about to watch the very first strokes of human history painted upon it. The land itself is less a lush, vibrant place and more a study in monochrome. There's the brilliant white of the snow and ice, the deep gray of the exposed rock faces, and the pale, muted blues of the sky and the glaciers. You can see why a civilization wouldn't just spring up here. It's a place that forces you to be resourceful, to be clever, to live on the very edge of what's possible for a human. The Saqqaq people didn't just survive here, they thrived for nearly 2,000 years. Their success in this impossible landscape is a testament to the incredible resilience and adaptability of humanity. Historians still argue whether their migration was a single large-scale event or a series of smaller, more gradual movements over time. But one thing is certain: they came, they saw, and they conquered the cold. Your mind starts to drift, trying to imagine the journey that brought them here. You're not just standing in Greenland, you're standing at the end of a long, arduous trek that began thousands of years ago in Siberia. These weren't people who just hopped on a plane. They walked, and they walked some more. A mainstream historical fact you probably do not know is that the ancestors of the Saqqaq people were part of a larger migration wave known as the Paleo-Eskimo tradition. They were the first to venture this far north, the pioneers of the Arctic. And here's a quirky tidbit. We know they were incredible travelers because their genetic markers found in ancient remains are almost completely isolated from later waves of migration. They were a singular, self-contained group that just kept pushing forward until they couldn't push any farther. You look out at the landscape and try to picture it through their eyes. The cold wind whips around you, carrying the scent of salt and ice. You can imagine what they must have felt when they saw this place for the first time. Was it fear? Excitement? A grim determination to make it work? They had to be a special kind of person to willingly step into this kind of unknown. And you, in your cozy spot, are about to witness their quiet, ancient survival unfold. You're watching their story from the comfort of your own home. But for them, every single day was a battle. A battle not just against the elements, but against a solitude so profound, it would make most modern people completely lose their minds. You're standing at the edge of the world, feeling the cold gnaw at your cheeks, but the true journey began long, long before this. Before Greenland, before even the vastness of the Canadian Arctic, there was Beringia. Imagine a land bridge, not a narrow sliver of dirt, but a massive expanse of tundra connecting Siberia to Alaska. For millennia, it was a highway for animals and eventually, for people. You can picture it, a vast, flat landscape, treeless and windswept, stretching as far as the eye can see. This is where your story truly starts, with the ancestors of the Saqqaq people. They weren't rushing, they were following herds perhaps, or simply pushing into new unpopulated territory, driven by a primal human need to see what's on the other side of the hill. The air here is thin and sharp, carrying a sense of deep history. This migration wasn't a sudden exodus. It was a slow, generational trudge. You can feel the echoes of their footsteps on the frozen ground. A mainstream historical fact is that the final closure of the Bering Strait land bridge due to rising sea levels happened around 11,000 years ago. But the migrations across it, including those of the Paleo-Eskimos, happened much earlier during periods when the glaciers locked up so much water that the ocean floor was exposed. This gave them a wide-open path, a sort of prehistoric superhighway. The ancestors of the Saqqaq people were part of a later wave, coming over long after the first humans had populated the Americas. This puts them in a unique position, arriving on a new continent after thousands of years of human settlement had already taken place further south. There's a quirky tidbit here that's just, a bit of a head-scratcher. Archaeologists have found what they believe are remnants of hearths and tools along the migratory paths that suggest these early travelers were remarkably efficient. They didn't leave behind a lot of waste. It's almost as if they knew every piece of wood, every chipped stone, was precious. They weren't just passing through, they were living as they went, treating the entire landscape as their temporary home. This speaks to a deep, ingrained respect for resources, something that you or I would probably struggle with, given our modern buy it and toss it mentality. You see a small, distant figure. It's not a single person, but a composite of all the people who made this immense journey. They are bundled in furs, their faces etched with the kind of hard-won knowledge that only comes from living outside the cozy confines of civilization. They're not talking much. Their conversation is in their movements, in the way they check the wind, in the shared glances that speak volumes. Historians still argue whether these migrations were driven by pure nomadic curiosity or were the result of environmental pressures like resource scarcity, but it's probably a bit of both. You're watching an incredible act of human determination, a slow-motion push against the limits of survival. You feel the fatigue set in just watching them. Every step is a deliberate effort, a testament to their strength. They aren't just walking, they are carrying everything they own on their backs or on simple sleds. Their lives are distilled down to the absolute essentials: tools, furs, and the knowledge of how to make it all work. There are no maps, no GPS, just an innate understanding of the landscape and the migration patterns of the animals they rely on. It's a kind of spatial awareness that's been lost to us, a deep, intuitive connection to the land that we just don't have anymore. It makes you feel a little bit humbled, a little bit small. The world was so much bigger back then, and these people were a lot tougher. Now you can feel the air getting colder, the landscape getting whiter. You're approaching the final leg of their long, silent journey. Greenland awaits, and with it, a new kind of survival. The landscape shifts around you, the tundra giving way to a more rugged, broken terrain. The endless flat plain of Beringia is a distant memory, replaced by a maze of fjords and mountains. The air here has a different quality to it, a crisp, biting saltiness that tells you we're at the edge of the world's biggest frozen ocean. This is it. This is Greenland. The Saqqaq people, your quiet companions on this long, slow march, are now faced with a landscape that is both beautiful and utterly unforgiving. It's a land of rock and ice, a place where survival isn't a given, but a daily negotiation. They have arrived not to a lush paradise, but to a new kind of challenge. You're watching them set up their first temporary camp, a small collection of skin tents huddled against a rocky outcrop. They move with an economy of motion that only comes from a life of constant practicality. Every action is precise. Every tool has a purpose. The first order of business is always fire. You see one of them meticulously gathering what little dry lichen and moss they can find. A mainstream historical fact is that the earliest Saqqaq settlements in Greenland were highly mobile, following the movements of animals in the changing seasons. They weren't building permanent villages just yet. They were establishing a foothold, a beachhead against the cold. It's a bit like playing a game of chess against nature, where every move has to be carefully calculated to stay one step ahead. A quirky tidbit that you might find interesting is that the Saqqaq were the first people in the Arctic to develop a specialized tool known as the burin. This wasn't just a knife or a spear point. It was a small chisel-like tool made of flint used for carving bone, antler, and ivory. You watch as one of them uses a burin with incredible dexterity, shaping a piece of antler into a fishing spearhead. It's a tiny tool, a little sliver of stone, but it represents a massive leap in technological innovation. This is not just survival, it's a mastery of the environment. You can almost hear the soft scraping sound of the stone on bone, a rhythmic, purposeful noise in the overwhelming silence. The initial days and weeks are a blur of hard work. They're not just finding food, they're learning a new geography, a new rhythm. The sea ice, which is their highway and their hunting ground, behaves differently here. The currents are stronger, the winds more unpredictable. There's a subtle, almost imperceptible tension in their movements as they learn the ropes, a quiet alertness. This is not a time for mistakes. One wrong step could mean an ice floe breaking apart, a seal escaping, or worse. Historians still argue whether they had prior knowledge of this environment from their journey through the Canadian Arctic, or if they were truly learning from scratch. But given the sheer difficulty of the terrain, it's likely they were improvising on the fly. You see a small child playing near the tents, a flash of red and brown against the white landscape. Even here, life finds a way to be playful. The child is using a small, smooth stone to trace patterns in the dirt, the kind of quiet, simple entertainment that has transcended time. It's a moment of pure humanity in the face of immense adversity. The quiet survival of the Saqqaq isn't just about hunting and building. It's about raising families, about passing on knowledge, about the sheer persistence of life. The fact that they made it this far is incredible. The fact that they stayed and thrived is a whole other story. You can feel the quiet satisfaction of a job well done as they gather around their small fire, the flames casting dancing shadows on their faces. The first chapter of human history in Greenland has officially begun. Now that you've seen them arrive, you get to watch them work. And by work, I mean creating the very tools that will be the difference between a comfortable existence and a very cold, hungry one. Forget what you know about modern tools. These aren't made in a factory. They're born from stone and bone, from countless hours of meticulous, patient craftsmanship. You crouch down and watch as one of them, a man with calloused hands and a face weathered by sun and wind, carefully selects a piece of chert. He holds it just so, his eyes narrowed in concentration. This is not a rushed process. It's an art form. You can feel the tension in the air as he raises a smaller stone, a hammerstone, and strikes the chert with precise, controlled blows. With each strike, a perfect flake of stone flies off, leaving a razor-sharp edge. This process, known as flint knapping, is the heart of their technology. The tools they create are surprisingly specific. A mainstream historical fact is that the Saqqaq people's toolkit included a distinctive style of microblade, and burin, tiny, sharp slivers of stone that they hafted or attached to bone or antler handles. These weren't big, clunky tools. They were small, almost delicate instruments designed for specific tasks: carving, scraping hides, and creating other tools. It's an incredibly efficient use of a finite resource, a lesson in less is more that we could all probably learn from. You watch as the man attaches one of these tiny blades to a piece of reindeer antler, creating a multi-purpose tool that can be used for cutting meat or shaping wood. It's a bit like watching a master chef prepare a meal with a single, perfectly balanced knife. There's a quirky tidbit here that truly highlights their ingenuity. Archaeologists have found bone and antler needles among their artifacts, some with holes so small you'd need a magnifying glass to see them. This suggests that they weren't just using crude furs for clothing. They were sewing. They were stitching together tight, windproof garments that were essential for surviving the brutal Greenlandic winters. Imagine the hours it must have taken to create a single needle, to then sew an entire suit of clothing by hand. It's a testament to their patience and their understanding of the very real consequences of a poorly made jacket. Historians still argue whether they developed this sewing technology in Greenland, or if they brought it with them. But either way, it was a game changer. It allowed them to stay warm, to stay mobile, and to survive. You see a young boy watching the craftsman, his eyes wide with fascination. He's not just observing, he's learning. Knowledge is passed down silently, from one generation to the next, through observation and imitation. There are no schools, no books, no classrooms. The entire world is a lesson, and survival is the only test that matters. The tools they make are not just instruments. They are vessels of knowledge, carrying the secrets of their ancestors in every carefully chipped edge and every smoothly carved handle. The spear points, the knives, the scrapers, they're all part of a silent conversation with the past. You can almost feel the weight of one of these tools in your hand. It's not heavy, but it feels significant, imbued with the intent of its creator. You realize that for the Saqqaq, every single object had to have a purpose, every single thing had to be earned. There was no room for junk, no room for unnecessary clutter. Their entire lives were a masterclass in minimalism, a quiet refusal to let the chaos of a harsh world affect their internal order. Their tools were a reflection of that, simple and elegant, a perfect marriage of form and function. And you, in this cozy little space, get to witness the incredible quiet birth of their culture, one carefully chipped stone at a time. Now that you've seen the tools, let's look at what they were used for. You're no longer just an observer. You're a quiet guest in a Saqqaq camp, and the daily rhythm of their lives is unfolding around you. The sun, low on the horizon even in the middle of the day, casts long, pale shadows. You can smell the faint scent of smoke and cooking meat, a deeply primal and reassuring smell that cuts through the sterile cold. This isn't just a collection of tents. It's a home, a community. And in this community, every single person has a role, a purpose. You watch as a group of people, both men and women, meticulously prepare animal hides. This is a crucial task. Without properly treated skins, they can't make clothing or shelter, and survival is impossible. They use those beautiful stone scrapers you saw being made earlier, patiently removing every last bit of fat and tissue. It's a tedious, back-breaking job, but there's a quiet camaraderie in their movements. You can almost hear the soft, rhythmic scraping sound, a gentle scratching that's part of the landscape soundtrack. A mainstream historical fact is that Saqqaq shelters were typically small, circular tents made of animal skins stretched over a frame of driftwood or bone. These weren't permanent structures. They were designed to be taken down and moved, a necessity for a nomadic people who had to follow their food source. It's a bit like a prehistoric artisanal pop-up shop. As you get closer, you see a quirky tidbit that speaks to their resourcefulness. They weren't just using caribou and muskox hides. Archaeologists have found evidence of them using the tough, thick hide of the polar bear. Imagine that. Not only did they have to hunt an animal that could easily eat them, but they then had to skin it and prepare that incredibly dense hide. That takes a special kind of bravery and a very, very sharp scraper. It's a reminder that their lives weren't just about simple hunting and gathering. It was about facing down the biggest, scariest things in their world and turning them into the means of their survival. You watch an elderly woman mend a torn hide with a bone needle and sinew thread. Her movements are slow but sure, born from a lifetime of practice. This is the transfer of knowledge, the quiet, unspoken language of a culture. Historians still argue whether the Saqqaq people had a complex social hierarchy, or if they lived in a more egalitarian society. There's not much archaeological evidence to suggest a lot of social stratification, which paints a picture of a more cooperative, communal existence where everyone's contribution was equally valued. It makes sense, right? When the world itself is trying to get you, you don't really have time for social drama or petty power struggles. The day ends as the low sun sinks below the jagged horizon, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and orange. The camp glows with the warm light of a few small fires. You see children bundled in furs, their faces alight with the dancing flames. They're listening to a story, perhaps of a great hunt or of the spirits of the land. This is the heart of a culture, not in grand buildings or written documents, but in the small, intimate moments shared around a fire. The quiet, ancient survival of the Saqqaq wasn't just about enduring the cold. It was about finding warmth, both literal and metaphorical, in the company of others. It was about building a life, not just for today, but for 1,000 years to come. The fires are low now, But the spiritual world of the Saqqaq people is still alive, a shimmering reality that exists alongside the physical world. You've seen their practical side, the tools, the camps, the hunting. But a culture is more than just its material possessions. It's the stories it tells itself, the beliefs that give meaning to an otherwise harsh and silent existence. You feel a shift in the air, a subtle deepening of the quiet. You're entering a realm where the lines between animal and human, life and death, and the physical and spiritual are blurred. Their beliefs were deeply animistic, which is a mainstream historical fact about most ancient hunter-gatherer societies. This means they believed that everything, the animals they hunted, the rocks on the mountainside, the wind itself, had a spirit. They weren't just taking the life of a caribou for food. They were entering into a sacred contract with the animal's spirit. You can almost see the silent respect in their movements during a hunt, a quiet understanding that they were being given a gift, not just taking a life. It's a humbling perspective, isn't it? It's the kind of worldview that makes you think twice about how you interact with the world around you. There's a quirky tidbit here that's fascinating. Archaeologists have found what they believe are remnants of small shamanistic rituals, little caches of specially selected stones or animal bones arranged in patterns. These could have been used by a shaman, a spiritual leader, to communicate with the spirit world. Imagine a lone figure, perhaps an elder, sitting quietly in the twilight, using these simple objects to speak with the spirits of the land. It's a powerful image, isn't it? It suggests a belief system that was deeply personal and tied directly to the natural world. The Saqqaq people didn't have a concept of God in the modern sense. They had a cosmology filled with powerful spirits and animal essences. Historians still argue whether they had a formalized spiritual system with a rigid set of rules, or if it was a more fluid, adaptive set of beliefs that changed from family to family and from place to place. The lack of written records makes it impossible to know for sure, but the scattered artifacts suggest a deeply ingrained respect for the unseen world that surrounded them. Their lives were a constant negotiation with these unseen forces, a quiet prayer with every step and every action. You feel a little shiver down your spine, but it's not from the cold. It's from a sense of reverence. The quiet of the landscape, which once felt empty and sterile, now feels full of 1,000 unseen things. You can almost hear the soft whisper of the wind spirits, the patient gaze of the ancient mountain spirits. The world around them wasn't just a physical place, it was a living, breathing, sacred entity. Their spirituality wasn't something they practiced once a week. It was a part of their daily survival, as essential as their tools and their furs. It was their way of making sense of a world that was vast, beautiful, and sometimes terrifyingly dangerous. They found a way to not just live in it, but to belong to it. You've seen their spirituality, you've seen their tools, and now you're about to witness the moment where it all comes together, the hunt. But this isn't a safari. This is an all-or-nothing venture, a quiet, almost spiritual undertaking that feeds the entire community. You feel the cold air on your face as you crouch with them on a rocky ridge, looking down into a broad valley. Down below, a herd of caribou graze peacefully, their pale brown coats a perfect camouflage against the muted colors of the tundra. Their heads are down, their movements slow and deliberate. This is the main course, the lifeblood of the Saqqaq people. The quiet is intense. No one speaks. There is only the wind and the sound of your own muffled breath. The hunters move like ghosts, using the natural contours of the land for cover. This isn't about brute force. It's about patience and a deep, ingrained knowledge of animal behavior. A mainstream historical fact is that the Saqqaq people were masters of what S called the drive hunt. They would work together, often using natural features like cliffs or narrow valleys to funnel the animals toward a prepared kill zone. You watch as a few of the hunters, much more mobile and silent, slowly circle around the herd to get into position, a slow, methodical pincer movement. There's a quirky tidbit here that shows their deep understanding of the environment. Archaeologists have found what they believe were ancient rock cairns and small stone walls, strategically placed along migratory routes. These weren't for defense. They were used to subtly guide the herds in a specific direction, making the hunt more predictable and less dangerous. It's a silent conversation with the landscape, a way of using the land's natural features to their advantage. It's a bit like playing a slow-motion, high-stakes game of pool, where the rocks are the bumpers. The tension builds. You can feel the quiet excitement and the profound fear. If this goes wrong, a lot of people go hungry. If it works, the entire community eats for weeks. You see a hunter raise his spear, the polished stone point glinting in the pale sunlight. It's an atlatl, a spear thrower, a tool that gives the spear extra velocity and range. Historians still argue whether the Saqqaq atlatl was a direct import from their ancestors or a local innovation developed in response to the massive open spaces of Greenland. But its effectiveness is undeniable. You see the flick of his wrist, the silent release, and the spear streaks through the air, and then the moment is over. The rest of the herd spooks and bolts, a brown wave disappearing over the horizon, but one animal is down. The hunters approach with a quiet reverence. You can see the gratitude on their faces. This isn't a trophy, this is life. The work of butchering is done quickly and efficiently, a testament to their practicality and skill. Nothing is wasted. The meat, the hide, the bone, the sinew, every single part of the animal will be used. The silence that preceded the hunt is now replaced by the quiet, purposeful sounds of work, of gratitude, and of survival. It's a powerful moment, a stark reminder of the delicate balance between life and death that governed their world. The caribou hunt was a masterful demonstration of their land-based skills, but remember that the Saqqaq people were living on a massive, frozen island. The sea wasn't a barrier, it was a highway and a larder. You feel the crisp, salty air on your face as you move with them toward the coast. The landscape changes again, the jagged mountains giving way to fjords that cut deep into the land, their waters a deep, cold blue. This is a completely different world, and it requires a completely different set of skills. The silent drama of the hunt is replaced by the quiet, rhythmic movements of a coastal life. You watch as a group of people, this time a mixture of men and women, launch a small, elegantly crafted kayak into the water. It's not a big boat. It's a sleek, single-person vessel made of sealskin, stretched tightly over a bone and driftwood frame. A mainstream historical fact is that the Saqqaq people were among the first Arctic cultures to develop and widely use the kayak. This wasn't just a fancy canoe, it was a key piece of technology that opened up a whole new world of food sources, from seals and small whales to birds and fish. You can almost feel the quiet pride as one of them glides out onto the water, his paddle moving in a smooth, effortless rhythm. There's a quirky tidbit here that shows their deep understanding of the coastal environment. Archaeologists have found what they believe were specialized harpoons with detachable heads. These harpoons were used to hunt seals from the kayaks. The head would detach and stay in the animal, while the attached line would allow the hunter to keep track of the animal from a distance. It's an ingenious solution, a bit like a very low-tech version of a fishing reel, designed to stop a massive, powerful animal from dragging the small kayak and its occupant into the icy depths. It's a reminder that their quiet survival was not just about brute strength, but about clever, elegant problem-solving. As you watch, another hunter is meticulously repairing a large net made of twisted sinew. This net is used for fishing, another vital source of protein and fat. The rhythm of their lives is tied to the tides and the seasons. They know when the fish are running, when the seals are congregating, and when it's safe to venture out onto the sea ice. Historians still argue whether their shift from a purely land-based hunting culture to one that was more reliant on the sea was a gradual internal development or an idea that was brought with them from their original homelands. It's likely a bit of both, a natural evolution in response to the abundance of coastal resources. The quiet of the camp is punctuated by the rhythmic scraping of tools and the soft lap of waves against the shore. You can almost feel the presence of the sea, a massive living entity that provides and threatens in equal measure. For the Saqqaq, the coast was not just the end of the land, it was the beginning of a new chapter in their survival. It was a place where they could find a different kind of food, a different kind of freedom. And you, in your cozy, warm spot, get to see the moment when they truly began to master this new world, one small, impossibly brave kayak ride at a time. Their quiet existence wasn't just about enduring. It was about adapting, about turning a new challenge into a new opportunity. You've seen them arrive, seen them settle, and seen them adapt to both land and sea. Now you get to watch the most powerful and quiet force of all: time. Over centuries, these small bands of pioneers began to spread across the vast, empty expanse of Greenland. They weren't rushing, they weren't conquering, they were simply expanding, finding new fjords, new hunting grounds, and new places to call home. You feel the slow, methodical pace of their expansion, a quiet ripple spreading across the land, a testament to their success. You see a small group, perhaps a single family, packing up their belongings. The process is smooth and efficient, a well-rehearsed ritual. They're not leaving out of desperation, but out of opportunity, venturing into a new, unpopulated valley a few days' walk away. This kind of slow, steady population growth is a mainstream historical fact that can be traced through the archaeological record. The distribution of Saqqaq-era artifacts, those beautiful tiny microblades and burins, shows a gradual but undeniable spread from the western coast of Greenland, where they first landed, all the way up to the far north. They were a bit like a gentle glacier, moving slowly but inexorably forward, leaving a trail of quiet, successful settlements in their wake. There's a quirky tidbit about this expansion that's a little bit of a mystery. Even as they spread, they maintained a remarkable level of cultural consistency. The tools found in a southern Saqqaq site look almost identical to those found hundreds of miles north, suggesting a strong cultural connection. It's a bit like if all the people in Europe, from Spain to Norway, were still using the exact same style of fork and spoon. It points to a constant flow of ideas and people, a kind of social network that existed long before the internet. Historians still argue whether this cultural uniformity was due to frequent long-distance travel and trade, or if it was simply a result of their shared heritage and a lack of external influence. You can feel the scale of this expansion. It's not just about a few families moving. It's about a culture claiming an entire enormous landmass, not with banners or walls, but with presence, with a quiet, persistent existence. They weren't building empires, they were building homes, one small camp at a time. The quiet of the landscape around you, which once felt empty, now feels subtly inhabited. The echo of a laugh from a child, the soft crunch of snow underfoot, the rhythmic tap-tap-tap of flint knapping. These sounds over time filled a vast, silent land. You look out at the immense, snow-covered landscape, and you feel a sense of profound admiration. This slow, quiet expansion is a story of success, a story of a people who were so well adapted to their world that they could thrive in every corner of it. There were no battles, no grand wars, just the patient, quiet survival of a people in harmony with their environment. Their legacy isn't a grand palace or a towering monument. It's the sheer fact of their widespread, millennia-long existence. It's the quiet, persistent pulse of humanity in an empty land, growing stronger with every passing year. You've seen their practical achievements and their quiet spread across the land. But now let's talk about something they didn't do. Something that makes the Saqqaq people a bit of a historical anomaly. As you settle into your spot, you're looking around the camp. You see the functional tools, the practical clothing, the well-designed tents, but you don't see any art. There are no cave paintings, no carvings of animals on rocks, no intricate patterns on their tools. The complete and utter absence of what we would consider artistic expression is a mainstream historical fact that makes them unique among ancient hunter-gatherer cultures. It's a bit like finding an entire thriving civilization that never once doodled. You can almost feel the weight of this silence. Most ancient cultures left some kind of artistic signature, whether it was the stunning cave paintings of Lascaux or the intricate carvings of the Clovis people. But the Saqqaq left none. Their legacy is entirely functional, entirely practical. There are no figures of animals, no depictions of the hunt, no stylized symbols. Everything they created had a purpose, a quiet, non-negotiable function. It's a bit like if you only ever created spreadsheets and never ever drew a picture. It's almost unsettling. There's a quirky tidbit here that's a little bit of a puzzle. While they left no representational art, archaeologists have found some tools with very subtle geometric patterns. These aren't pictures of anything. just a series of small, repetitive lines or dots. Was this a rudimentary form of art? A way of marking ownership? Or was it just a decorative flourish that someone, at some point, decided to add? We don't know. But the fact that even these are incredibly rare suggests that it wasn't a cultural priority. Historians still argue whether this lack of art means they had a different cultural emphasis, perhaps on storytelling or oral traditions that didn't require a physical record, or if their lives were simply too consumed by the demands of survival to allow for artistic pursuits. You can't help but wonder, was it a cultural taboo? A belief that to capture the image of an animal was to steal its spirit? Or did they simply not see the point? The absence of something is often more telling than its presence. Their quiet, ancient survival wasn't just about what they did, but about what they chose not to do. They were a people who prioritized the necessary over the beautiful, function over form. Their world was already a masterpiece of snow, ice, and sky. Perhaps they felt there was nothing they could add to it with their own hands. You feel a sense of profound respect for this quiet, unadorned culture. In a world of noise and overstimulation, where everything has to be beautiful, to have a filter on it, the Saqqaq people were a living testament to the power of simplicity. Their existence wasn't about being seen or leaving a flashy legacy. It was about being, about simply living and surviving in a land that demanded everything of them. The art of the Saqqaq people was their very survival, and that in itself is a masterpiece. You've seen their journey across the land, their masterful tools, and their quiet, unadorned culture. But what you can see with your own eyes is the most incredible part of their story, their DNA. You can feel the cold wind on your face, but you're also about to feel a connection that spans thousands of years and thousands of miles. It's a connection that ties these quiet Greenland pioneers to a place you've only heard about in history books, Siberia. The genetic story of the Saqqaq people is a mainstream historical fact, a powerful piece of evidence that has reshaped our understanding of the peopling of the Americas and the Arctic. Decades of archaeological work told us that the Saqqaq were the first to arrive in Greenland, but their origins were a mystery. Then in the early 2010s, scientists were able to extract and sequence the entire genome of a 4,000-year-old Saqqaq man, nicknamed Inuk. The results were astonishing. His DNA was not a match for modern Inuit or indigenous peoples of the Americas. Instead, it showed a clear, unmistakable genetic link to ancient peoples from the remote Altai Mountains of Siberia. It was a bit like taking a DNA test and finding out you're not related to any of your neighbors, but to a long-lost cousin who lives on the other side of the planet. There's a quirky tidbit here that's pretty wild. This discovery meant that the Saqqaq people were part of a completely separate migration wave from the ancestors of the Inuit and Native Americans. They were a distinct, self-contained population that made its own way across Beringia and into the Arctic, a quiet, almost forgotten chapter in human history. It's a powerful reminder that history isn't a single straight line, but a complex web of migrations and connections. Inuk's genetic signature is a ghostly whisper from the past, telling us that his people, the Saqqaq, were a singular group that came, survived, and then mysteriously vanished without leaving a genetic legacy in Greenland. The story of Inuk's genome is not just about a single person, it's about an entire people. It confirms that they were a distinct culture, with their own unique heritage and journey. Historians still argue whether this genetic isolation was the result of a single, rapid migration, or if they simply chose to remain separate from other groups they may have encountered. The fact that their DNA shows no sign of intermingling with later arrivals like the Dorset or Thule cultures suggests a quiet, but profound, social separation. They lived in their own world, following their own path, a testament to their quiet, ancient survival. You can almost feel the presence of this ancient Siberian connection. It's a reminder that we're all a part of a much larger, much older story. The cold wind on your face, the quiet crunch of the snow underfoot, these are the same sensory details that their ancestors experienced thousands of years ago in a completely different part of the world. The Saqqaq people's legacy isn't just in the artifacts they left behind, it's in the incredible, humbling story their quiet DNA tells. They were pioneers in the truest sense of the word, and their journey is a testament to the incredible resilience of a people who went farther and quieter than almost anyone else in history. The journey and the survival you've been witnessing weren't static. They were in constant motion, and so was the world around them. You feel the air getting colder, the wind picking up a little. This isn't a change in the weather. It's a change in the climate, a slow, inexorable shift that the Saqqaq people had to contend with for centuries. A mainstream historical fact is that during the time of the Saqqaq people, the climate of Greenland was not uniform. They lived through what is known as the late Holocene, a period characterized by a gradual cooling trend and a series of smaller, more localized climatic fluctuations. It's a bit like living in a world where the weather forecast is always slightly off, and the seasons are constantly in flux. This wasn't a sudden, cataclysmic event. It was a slow, quiet change that affected everything. A slightly colder winter meant a more solid sea ice, which could be good for hunting seals but bad for traveling. A cooler summer might mean less plant life, which could affect the caribou herds they relied on. You can almost feel the quiet tension as they had to constantly reevaluate their strategies, their hunting grounds, and their very way of life. The environment was their most important partner, but it was also a partner that was always changing its mind. There's a quirky tidbit here that shows their remarkable adaptability. As the climate cooled, the Saqqaq people's diet subtly shifted, with archaeological evidence showing an increased reliance on marine mammals, especially seals, over caribou. This suggests that as the land ice expanded and the caribou herds may have become more difficult to track, they simply turned to the sea, which was becoming more accessible with changes in the sea ice. It's a quiet testament to their flexibility, a calm, cool-headed response to a world that was slowly but surely trying to make things difficult for them. You can almost feel the quiet conversation they must have had, a discussion about where to go next, what to hunt next. There were no news reports, no weather apps, just a deep, intuitive knowledge of the land and a quiet trust in their own ability to adapt. Historians still argue whether these climatic shifts were the primary reason for their eventual disappearance, or if it was a combination of other factors, but it's undeniable that the environmental changes they lived through were a constant, quiet pressure on their way of life. The world you're witnessing isn't a frozen diorama. It's a living, breathing, and changing entity. The Saqqaq people's quiet, ancient survival wasn't just about enduring the cold. It was about enduring the change. They were masters of a world that was constantly in flux, and their success for over 2,000 years is a testament to their quiet resilience. They didn't fight the change, they moved with it, a silent, graceful dance with the shifting climate. Remember those beautiful small tools we talked about earlier? The burns and microblades? You're about to see them not as a single type, but as a testament to the quiet, subtle variations in the Saqqaq people's world. Their toolkit wasn't a static collection. It was a living, breathing thing that changed and adapted with the terrain. You feel the cold air on your hands as you examine a collection of artifacts, and you can almost feel the presence of the people who made them. A mainstream historical fact is that while the general style of the Saqqaq toolkit remained consistent, there were subtle regional variations. The tools found in coastal settlements, for example, often showed a greater emphasis on harpoon points and small knives for butchering seals. The tools found further inland, however, leaned more toward larger spear points and scrapers for preparing caribou hides. It's a bit like a modern toolbox, where a carpenter and a plumber might have some of the same tools, but their specialized tools are completely different. This shows a quiet, almost imperceptible mastery of their local environment, a tailoring of their technology to the specific challenges and opportunities of each new place. There's a quirky tidbit here that's fascinating. Archaeologists have found some microblades that are so small, so impossibly tiny, that they were likely used for incredibly delicate tasks, like preparing sinew thread for sewing, or even possibly for tattooing. Imagine the kind of fine motor control and patience that would take. The fact that they bothered to create tools for such minor tasks suggests that they weren't just living from hunt to hunt. They were planning ahead, thinking about the quality of their clothing, the strength of their thread. Their quiet existence wasn't just about the big things, it was about the 1,000 little things that made survival possible. Historians still argue whether these regional variations were due to different groups adapting independently, or if they were the result of a subtle, long-distance trade network. It's likely a bit of both, a quiet sharing of ideas and techniques that spread slowly across the vast landscape. You can almost picture it, a family traveling to a new area and learning a different way of making a tool, a new trick for sharpening a blade. It's a kind of slow, quiet innovation that is only possible when a culture is in deep harmony with its environment. You feel a sense of profound respect for this subtlety, for the quiet brilliance that went into creating these small, elegant tools. They aren't just artifacts, they are stories in stone. They tell a story of a people who weren't just surviving but thriving by paying close attention to the world around them and adapting their technology with a quiet, elegant precision. The tools of the Saqqaq weren't just for survival, they were a quiet conversation with the land itself. You've seen them hunt the mighty caribou and the elusive seal, but their diet wasn't just a meat and fat buffet. Their quiet survival was based on a much broader and more creative menu. You can almost feel the presence of a quieter, more patient kind of hunting as you stand on the shoreline with the Saqqaq family. They are not waiting for a massive animal. They are looking for smaller, more subtle opportunities. A mainstream historical fact is that while the Saqqaq people were highly skilled big game hunters, their diet was incredibly diverse and included a wide range of marine and terrestrial animals. This adaptability was key to their survival in a challenging and unpredictable environment. You watch as a child carefully uses a small pointed bone to pry mussels from a rock face. The sound is a quiet clicking, a small but significant part of the daily food gathering. This is a far cry from the dramatic caribou hunt, but it's just as important. These small, reliable food sources provided a steady stream of nutrients when larger game was scarce. They weren't just eating to survive, they were eating for balance, for health. There's a quirky tidbit here that's a bit of a surprise. Archaeological evidence from ancient Saqqaq middens, basically prehistoric trash piles, shows that they ate a lot of birds, especially seabirds like murres and guillemots. They would have hunted them with small, specialized harpoons or even just by catching them as they nested in massive colonies on the cliffs. It's a reminder that no food source was off limits. No challenge was too great for their quiet ingenuity. You feel the chill of the wind, but the sun is warm on your back and you can almost imagine the smell of fresh fish cooking over a low fire. They would have fished with nets, with bone hooks, and with small spears. The waters of the fjords were a massive, reliable resource, providing everything from cod to Arctic char. Historians still argue whether their diet was primarily land-based or sea-based, but the truth is it probably depended on the season and the location. They were masters of both worlds, moving quietly between them, taking what the land and the sea offered. The quiet of the camp is punctuated by the soft sounds of a well-oiled machine. Someone is scraping a hide, another is mending a net, and a third is cracking open the bones of a seal to get at the rich marrow inside. Every part of the animal is used. Every morsel of food is cherished. Their quiet survival was a lesson in zero-waste living, a kind of primal sustainability that we could learn a thing or two from. The food wasn't just sustenance, it was a connection to the world, a reminder of the delicate balance between taking and giving. They ate the flesh of the land and the sea, and in doing so, they became a part of it. The quiet existence of the Saqqaq wasn't about a single thing. It was about the 1,000 little things that made a life possible. You've seen the hunters, the tool makers, the quiet family on the shoreline. But what you can't always see in the historical record is the full picture. The quiet survival of the Saqqaq people wasn't just a story of men. It was a story of a community where everyone had a vital, non-negotiable role. You feel the cold air on your hands as you watch a group of women meticulously chewing on a caribou hide. This isn't some strange ancient ritual. It's a mainstream historical fact. Chewing hides was a common practice among Arctic peoples to soften them and make them pliable for clothing and shelter. It was an incredibly labor-intensive process, a quiet, repetitive act that was as essential as any hunt. You watch as they work, their jaws moving in a steady rhythm. This is a communal activity, a time for quiet conversation and the sharing of stories. Their work wasn't just physical, it was social. The strength and warmth of a family's clothing depended directly on their hard work. And it wasn't just about clothing. Women were also responsible for preparing the food, collecting plants and berries in the short summer, and maintaining the camp. A quirky tidbit is that archaeologists have found specialized tools like bone awls and needles that are often associated with women's work, suggesting a clear division of labor but with an equally important set of skills. The role of women in Saqqaq society was not just that of a quiet helpmate. They were the keepers of knowledge, the teachers of the next generation. They passed down the secrets of how to prepare a hide, how to sew a seam, and how to find a safe place to camp. Historians still argue whether the Saqqaq people had a more egalitarian society than later, more stratified cultures, but the evidence of shared labor and the importance of both male and female roles suggests a quiet, cooperative balance. When survival depends on everyone working together, there's no room for gendered hierarchies. You feel a profound sense of respect for this unseen half of the story. The quiet survival of the Saqqaq people was not just about the dramatic hunt. It was about the endless, quiet, and often unseen work that happened every single day. The strength of the community, the warmth of the shelter, the food on the fire, all of it was a testament to the hard work of everyone, from the oldest elder to the youngest child. Their lives were a symphony of shared tasks, a quiet hum of cooperation in the face of immense challenges. It's a reminder that history isn't just made by the big, bold actions, but by the countless small, quiet acts of daily life. You've seen them hunt, you've seen them work, but how did they ever find their way in this immense, featureless land? Navigating the vast, frozen landscape of Greenland was an act of quiet genius, a skill that we've completely lost in our GPS-reliant world. You're walking with them now, not on a path, but on a memory of a path, a route passed down through countless generations. This isn't just a physical journey, it's a mental one, a silent conversation between a people and their environment. A mainstream historical fact is that the Saqqaq people, like other Arctic cultures, had an incredible understanding of the land's subtle features. They used everything as a landmark: the shape of a fjord, the angle of the sun, the prevailing wind direction, and the location of specific rock formations or cairns. They didn't need maps because the map was etched into their minds and their memories. It was a kind of quiet, intuitive navigation that was incredibly effective. You can almost feel it as you walk with them. A subtle shift in the wind tells them they're getting closer to the coast. The shape of a distant mountain range confirms their direction. There's a quirky tidbit here that's fascinating. Archaeologists believe that the Saqqaq may have used a type of snow compass, where they could use the direction of the wind-blown snowdrifts to orient themselves even on the most overcast days. It's a bit like a low-tech version of a nautical compass, a quiet tool that relies on an intimate knowledge of the environment. Historians still argue whether they had a formalized system of celestial navigation, using the stars to find their way in the long, dark Arctic nights, or if their system was based entirely on terrestrial landmarks. Given the long periods of darkness and the lack of a prominent North Star in the Arctic sky, it's likely a combination of both, a quiet, layered system of knowledge that was always adapting. You feel a profound sense of respect for their navigational skills. In a land where a wrong turn could mean certain death, their quiet, ancient survival was a testament to their deep, ingrained understanding of their world. They weren't just moving across the landscape, they were moving with it, a quiet, symbiotic dance between a people and their home. They were a living, breathing part of the map, a quiet echo in the immense, silent expanse. And you, in your cozy, warm spot, get to see the moment when they truly began to master this new world, one quiet, impossibly brave step at a time. You've seen them thrive, adapt, and expand across the land. But their quiet, ancient survival wasn't a story without an end. You feel a subtle shift in the air, a sense of an ending that is both mysterious and profound. You're entering the final act of the Saqqaq story, their slow, quiet disappearance from Greenland. A mainstream historical fact is that around 2,500 to 2,800 years ago, the Saqqaq people completely vanished from the archaeological record in Greenland. It wasn't a sudden, violent end. It was a silent, gradual fading, leaving behind only their tools and the whispers of their existence. It's a bit like a ghost slowly fading from a photograph. There's no single, clear-cut answer for why they disappeared. Historians still argue whether it was due to a slow, progressive cooling of the climate, the arrival of a new culture, or some other unknown factor. One theory, a quirky tidbit, suggests that their cultural isolation may have been their undoing. Unlike later cultures that migrated to the area and intermingled, the Saqqaq people's DNA shows almost no signs of contact with other groups. This could have made them vulnerable to new diseases, or simply unable to compete with new technologies and hunting methods. It's a bit like a lone wolf pack that refuses to join a larger one, and eventually just fades away. Another theory posits that they simply migrated back, that the environmental pressures became too great, and they quietly packed up their tents and headed back south, a slow, methodical retreat. The problem with this theory is that there is no solid archaeological evidence to support a return migration. The trails they left behind simply end. It's a mystery as profound as their initial arrival. You can almost feel the weight of this uncertainty, the quiet questions that hang in the air. What happened to them? Did they all die out? Did they slowly, quietly, assimilate into a new culture that we just haven't found evidence of yet? You feel the sense of an immense, heartbreaking silence. Their quiet, ancient survival was a story of a people in deep harmony with their environment, a testament to their quiet resilience. But that resilience wasn't endless. The world changed, and they did not, or perhaps could not, change with it. Their legacy isn't a grand war or a spectacular fall from grace. It's the quiet, persistent pulse of their existence, and the profound silence that followed. Their disappearance is a quiet, powerful reminder that even the most successful cultures are fragile. And you, in your cozy, warm spot, are left with the quiet, haunting question of what could have been. Remember the quiet hunt for the caribou? The silent mastery of the coastal waters? You've seen how they lived, how they created, but there was a silent partner in their survival, a constant companion that you can almost feel beside you. The Saqqaq people had dogs. This isn't just a quirky tidbit, it's a mainstream historical fact that recent archaeological and genetic evidence has made clear. Their dogs weren't just pets, they were an absolutely vital part of their society, a quiet and furry extension of the family unit. These weren't the fluffy lapdogs you see today. These were hardy, Arctic-adapted canines, genetically distinct from modern breeds, a kind of primal dog built for the cold. You can almost feel the quiet presence of one of them beside you, its thick coat and a keen eye fixed on the horizon. Historians still argue whether these dogs were primarily for hunting, for protection, or for carrying burdens. It was likely all three. They would have been essential for tracking game, for providing an early warning of a polar bear, and for helping to pull sleds, though there's no direct evidence of large-scale sled use. Their role was a quiet, multifaceted one. There's a fascinating, and a little bit heartbreaking, quirky tidbit here. Archaeologists have found the remains of Saqqaq dogs that show signs of having been cared for after sustaining injuries. This suggests a deep, emotional bond between the people and their animals. It wasn't just a transactional relationship. It was a partnership based on trust and mutual reliance. You can almost picture it. A person quietly tending to a dog's wounded leg, a shared moment of empathy in the vast, silent cold. Their quiet, ancient survival wasn't just a story of human endurance. It was a story of a partnership between two species, a quiet understanding that transcended words. The dogs were a part of the family, a part of the daily rhythm of life. They were the first to hear a distant sound, the first to smell a change in the wind. Their presence would have brought a different kind of warmth to the camp, a quiet, reassuring comfort in a world that was often harsh and unforgiving. The disappearance of the Saqqaq people, which we just touched on, is made even more poignant by the thought of these quiet, loyal companions. What happened to them? Did they vanish along with their human partners? It's a quiet, heartbreaking question. The Saqqaq people's legacy isn't just in the artifacts they left behind. It's in the quiet, loyal echoes of their dogs, a silent testament to a deep and ancient bond. You've seen the hunters, the tool makers, the quiet family on the shoreline. But what you can't always see in the historical record is the full picture. The quiet survival of the Saqqaq people wasn't just a story of men. It was a story of a community where everyone had a vital, non-negotiable role. You feel the cold air on your hands as you watch a group of women meticulously chewing on a caribou hide. This isn't some strange ancient ritual. It's a mainstream historical fact. Chewing hides was a common practice among Arctic peoples to soften them and make them pliable for clothing and shelter. It was an incredibly labor-intensive process, a quiet, repetitive act that was as essential as any hunt. You watch as they work, their jaws moving in a steady rhythm. This is a communal activity, a time for quiet conversation and the sharing of stories. Their work wasn't just physical, it was social. The strength and warmth of a family's clothing depended directly on their hard work. And it wasn't just about clothing. Women were also responsible for preparing the food, collecting plants and berries in the short summer, and maintaining the camp. A quirky tidbit is that archaeologists have found specialized tools, like bone awls and needles, that are often associated with women's work, suggesting a clear division of labor but with an equally important set of skills. The role of women in Saqqaq society was not just that of a quiet helpmate. They were the keepers of knowledge, the teachers of the next generation. They passed down the secrets of how to prepare a hide, how to sew a seam, and how to find a safe place to camp. Historians still argue whether the Saqqaq people had a more egalitarian society than later, more stratified cultures, but the evidence of shared labor and the importance of both male and female roles suggests a quiet, cooperative balance. When survival depends on everyone working together, there's no room for gendered hierarchies. You feel a profound sense of respect for this unseen half of the story. The quiet survival of the Saqqaq people was not just about the dramatic hunt. It was about the endless, quiet, and often unseen work that happened every single day. The strength of the community, the warmth of the shelter, the food on the fire, all of it was a testament to the hard work of everyone, from the oldest elder to the youngest child. Their lives were a symphony of shared tasks, a quiet hum of cooperation in the face of immense challenges. It's a reminder that history isn't just made by the big, bold actions, but by the countless small, quiet acts of daily life. You've witnessed the physical work, the social structure, and the tools of the Saqqaq people, but there's a part of them that we can only guess at: their language. You're no longer just an observer. You're a quiet listener, trying to piece together a language that has been silent for thousands of years. The quiet hum of the camp, the soft sounds of daily life. These were once filled with words, a language that was a reflection of their world. A mainstream historical fact is that because the Saqqaq culture existed long before the advent of writing, we have no direct evidence of their language. We can't know what it sounded like, what its grammar was, or what their words for ice or caribou were. This lack of a linguistic record is a profound silence. It's a bit like looking at a beautiful silent film and trying to imagine the dialogue. We can see the actions, we can understand the relationships, but we can't hear their voices. There's a quirky tidbit here, though, that gives us a hint. The genetic studies that identified the Saqqaq's connection to ancient Siberian peoples also suggest a possible linguistic link. This means their language was likely part of a completely separate family from the languages of the later Inuit peoples who arrived in Greenland. It was a language born of a different time, a different place, and a different journey. Historians still argue whether their language was a direct offshoot of a known Siberian language or a unique, isolated tongue that vanished with them. You can almost feel the presence of their words, the guttural sounds of the cold, the soft whispers of a story told around a fire, the call of a hunter. Their language would have been a direct reflection of their world, with countless words for different types of snow, ice, and seals. Their vocabulary would have been a quiet testament to their mastery of the environment, a linguistic map of their home. You feel a sense of profound respect for this lost part of their legacy. Their quiet, ancient survival wasn't just physical, it was linguistic. It was a story of a culture that spoke its own unique language, a quiet hum in the vast, silent expanse of Greenland. And you, in your cozy, warm spot, get to listen to the echoes of that beautiful, lost language. The quiet, ancient survival of the Saqqaq people may have ended, but their legacy didn't. You're no longer in the distant past. You're standing in the present, looking at the modern Inuit cultures of Greenland and the Arctic, and you can see the faint, quiet echoes of the Saqqaq. A mainstream historical fact is that while modern Inuit people are not genetically related to the Saqqaq, who vanished thousands of years ago, they occupy the same land and, in some ways, carry on a similar way of life. The Saqqaq were the first chapter in a long story of human survival in the Arctic, a story that the Inuit people have continued to write. You can see it in the quiet mastery of the environment, The way a modern Inuit hunter can read the sea ice, or the way a family can travel across the vast, empty landscape, these are skills that were honed and perfected by their Saqqaq predecessors. There's a quirky tidbit here that's particularly poignant. The traditional Inuit harpoon, used for hunting seals and whales, has a detachable head, a technology that is eerily similar to the one we saw the Saqqaq people using thousands of years ago. It's a quiet testament to the enduring power of good ideas and a deep intuitive understanding of the Arctic environment. Historians still argue whether this is a case of technological convergence, where two different cultures developed the same solution to the same problem, or if there was some form of cultural transfer. But either way, it's a beautiful, quiet echo of the past in the present. The legacy of the Saqqaq people is not just in their technology, it's in the very idea of human survival in this immense silent land. They were the pioneers who proved it was possible, the quiet, ancient foundation upon which all later Arctic cultures were built. Their story is a reminder that the history of a place is not just about the people who are there now, but about the quiet, persistent ghosts of the people who came before, and you, in your cozy, warm spot, are now a part of that legacy, a quiet listener to a story that has been whispering in the wind for thousands of years. The Saqqaq people may be gone, but their quiet, persistent spirit lives on in the land they were the first to call home. You've seen their legacy, but you're about to witness how that legacy is still being uncovered. The quiet, ancient survival of the Saqqaq people is not a closed book. It's a story that is still being written, one quiet discovery at a time. You're no longer in the distant past. You're standing in a modern archaeological site in Greenland, and the air is filled with a quiet sense of anticipation. A mainstream historical fact is that recent archaeological finds in Greenland, often made possible by the quiet, slow melting of the glaciers, have continued to reshape our understanding of the Saqqaq. These discoveries are not dramatic. They are quiet, meticulous, and profoundly important. You watch as an archaeologist carefully unearths a small, perfectly preserved wooden artifact from the permafrost. The wood is so old it feels almost ethereal, and you can see the faint tool marks left by a Saqqaq hand thousands of years ago. It's a quirky tidbit, but this kind of preservation is a game changer. Organic materials like wood, leather, and even bone are incredibly rare in most archaeological sites. But in the permafrost of Greenland, they are often found in near-perfect condition. This allows us to see not just the stone tools, but the tools with their handles still attached, the clothing and the hunting gear. It's a bit like seeing a photograph of a long-lost ancestor for the first time. These new finds are not just giving us more stuff, they are giving us a more complete picture of their lives. Historians still argue whether the quiet, slow pace of these discoveries will ever be able to answer the biggest questions, like why they disappeared. But every new find adds a new piece to the puzzle. The discovery of a new type of tool or a new kind of food midden can completely change our understanding of their daily lives. The quiet, ancient survival of the Saqqaq people isn't just about the past, it's about the present. It's a reminder that history isn't just a collection of facts in a book. It's a living, breathing thing that is constantly being uncovered. The quiet is punctuated by the soft scrape of a trowel, the gentle brush of a hand, and the low murmur of discovery. And you, in your cozy, warm spot, are a quiet witness to the unfolding of a story that is thousands of years in the making. You've seen their journey, their survival, and the echoes they left behind. Now let's do something a little different. Let's imagine. What if they hadn't disappeared? What if the Saqqaq people had survived quietly, in Greenland, to the present day? You feel a shift in the air, a quiet question that hangs in the immense, silent expanse. This isn't a history lesson, it's a thought experiment, and there's no right answer. A mainstream historical fact is that their isolated genetic heritage meant they would have evolved completely separately from later human arrivals in Greenland. This would have created a unique cultural lineage, a story that is utterly and completely their own. You can almost picture it, a quiet, resilient people living in harmony with the changing Arctic, their society still based on the principles of community, cooperation, and a deep, intuitive knowledge of the land. Their tools, which were a quiet masterpiece of functionality, would have evolved. A quirky tidbit is that they might have developed new technologies, perhaps incorporating elements of later cultures, but with their own unique twist. The bone needles and microblades might have been replaced by steel, but the quiet, patient craftsmanship would have remained the same. They would have been a living testament to a way of life that has been all but lost in the modern world. They would have had their own language, their own stories, their own spiritual beliefs. A language that was a quiet, direct reflection of the land itself. Historians still argue whether they would have ever developed a written language, or if they would have remained a purely oral culture, but either way, their stories would have been a treasure trove, a unique window into a way of thinking that is thousands of years old. Their quiet, ancient survival would have become a quiet, modern existence, a powerful and living reminder of our shared human history. The quiet of the landscape around you feels different now. It feels like a space of infinite possibility, a place where a story that could have been is just as real as a story that was. Their disappearance is a powerful reminder that history is filled with paths not taken, with stories that were cut short, and you, in your cozy, warm spot, get to imagine a world where the quiet, persistent pulse of the Saqqaq people never faded. You've imagined their survival, and now let's return to what was. You're back in their world, but the air feels different. The quiet, ancient survival of the Saqqaq people wasn't a constant struggle against a harsh world. It was a beautiful, quiet existence in harmony with it. The beauty of their lives wasn't in grand monuments or spectacular art, but in their quiet, minimalist existence. A mainstream historical fact is that their culture was one of extreme simplicity, driven by the demands of a nomadic lifestyle. There was no excess, no clutter, no junk. Everything had a purpose. It's a bit like living in a world where the only thing you own is what you can carry, a kind of primal minimalism that is both beautiful and humbling. You see a family setting up camp, and their movements are an elegant dance of efficiency. The tent is raised, the fire is lit, the meal is prepared, all with a quiet grace and a complete lack of wasted motion. There's a quirky tidbit here that's fascinating. Archaeologists have found what they believe were small handheld bone combs. This suggests a concern for personal grooming and hygiene, even in the most extreme conditions. It's a quiet reminder that their lives weren't just about survival. It was about finding a way to live with dignity and grace, a quiet commitment to the small comforts of a civilized life. The quiet of the landscape around you is not a sign of emptiness. It's a sign of a life lived in harmony with the world, a deep intuitive knowledge of the seasons, the animals, and the land itself. Historians still argue whether their simplicity was a choice or a necessity, but in a world where we are constantly surrounded by noise and distractions, their quiet, minimalist existence feels profoundly wise. They didn't need a lot of things to be a culture. They just needed each other, their tools, and a deep, abiding respect for the world they lived in. And you, in your cozy, warm spot, get to see the quiet beauty of that life. The quiet is immense now. The fire is just a bed of glowing embers. The tents are dark shapes against the pale sky. The story you've been a part of is fading, but its final echoes are all around you. The quiet, ancient survival of the Saqqaq people is a testament to the quiet persistence of humanity itself. A mainstream historical fact is that their culture existed for almost 2,000 years, a span of time that is nearly half of recorded human history. Think about that for a second. We tend to focus on empires that rise and fall in a few centuries, but the Saqqaq were a quiet, enduring presence for an unimaginable amount of time. There's a quirky tidbit that puts this in perspective. When the Saqqaq people were first setting up their camps in Greenland, the first Egyptian pyramids were just being built. When they quietly vanished, the Iron Age was just beginning in Europe. They were a living bridge between two completely different eras of human history, a quiet, unseen thread that ran from one to the other. And now, as you feel the quiet fade into the immense, silent expanse, you're left with a sense of profound and beautiful humility. Historians still argue whether their story is one of failure or success, but a people who endured for 2,000 years in the most unforgiving landscape on Earth are, in every sense of the word, a success. You can almost feel the presence of their quiet, resilient spirits, a quiet echo in the immense, silent expanse. Their legacy isn't a grand war or a spectacular fall from grace. It's the quiet, persistent pulse of their existence and the profound silence that followed. Their disappearance is a quiet, powerful reminder that even the most successful cultures are fragile. But their life, their quiet, ancient survival, is a testament to the strength and resilience of a people who went farther and quieter than almost anyone else in history. The air is still. The world is quiet. The fire is gone now, leaving only the memory of its warmth. You've traveled thousands of years and thousands of miles, but you're right back where you started, in your cozy, warm spot. The quiet, ancient survival of the Saqqaq people is now a part of your own story, a quiet, gentle echo in your mind. The wind outside is just the wind. The soft hum of the fan is just the hum. It's a quiet world, and you're a quiet part of it. Your eyelids feel heavy. Your breathing is slow and steady. The images are fading now. The caribou, the kayaks, the quiet faces around the fire. They're all part of a dream, a journey that is ending. The quiet, ancient survival of the Saqqaq people is no longer a story, but a feeling of peace, of profound simplicity, of a deep and quiet connection to a world that you only just met. It's time to let go. Just breathe. Let the quiet wash over you. Let the silence be your guide. The story is over. The journey is done. All that's left is the gentle, comforting hum of the night. Sleep now.